This is the performing songwriter, and my name is Ray Naylor. My guest today is Joe Jencks. Joe Jencks is an award-winning performing songwriter who has been performing worldwide for the last 18 years. Joe has been a performer at a number of festivals, including the Kerrville Folk Festival, Falcone Ridge Folk Festival, and Old Songs. He has performed before small audiences such as house concerts up to large venues, including Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall. He was co-founder with the very popular trio Brother Son and has also shared the stage with artists including Pete Seeger, Holly Near, John McCutcheon, Utal Phillips, Peter and Bethany Yarrow, and many, many more. Before I talk to Joe about much more, we're going to listen to one of his original songs.
When I was a kid, I used to listen to a lot of music from a lot of different sources, from big band and classical music to jazz to rock and roll. But when I was about 8 years old, my sister came home from college with a record that really changed the direction of my life. It was Pete Seeger and Arlo Guthrie live at Carnegie Hall. And I realized as I listened to songs on that record, songs from all over the world, that that the world was just this incredible ocean of humanity, and that music was a vessel that I could sail forward into that ocean to explore it. And that music brought me all over the world and into cultures I would never have imagined even existed, and lit a fire within me to want to explore that world. And so I really credit Pete Seeger a lot with my choice to pursue the life of being a touring musician as my profession. And I never would have guessed as a child listening to those records that I would grow up to know Pete Seeger and be friends with Pete Seeger. But that's exactly what happened. And being friends with Pete doesn't make me unique, but it does make me very happy. Pete was friends with a lot of people, and he was absolutely as gracious as he seemed from a distance. And so on the morning that Pete passed away, I really wanted to honor Pete, not just the famous Pete that was seen from a distance as one of the great international stars of music, but the Pete that was a friend and a mentor and an activist and somebody who really stood up for what he believed when it most counted. And in 1955, Pete was called before something called the House Un-American Activities Committee, accused of crimes, really social crimes, of believing the wrong thing, of saying the wrong thing. And he was asked if he was going to use the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution as his defense. The Fifth Amendment suggests that one does not have to bear witness against themselves if in doing so they will incriminate themselves. And Pete said, no, I'm using the First Amendment, which guarantees me freedom of speech. I've done nothing wrong but exercise my constitutional rights. And one of the congressmen got frustrated and stomped his foot and was just really kind of in Pete's business about it. And Pete finally just said, gentlemen, all I am is a singer. I travel all over the world, and I sing songs that somehow lessen the distance between people. As for these other accusations that you're making, I really don't know how to answer them. But I brought my banjo with me, and if you'd like, I'll sing you a few of those songs, and maybe then you'll understand that what I do isn't so dangerous. It's really just work that helps bring people together. And so I read through Pete's testimony on the morning that he passed away, and from that testimony, this song emerged. It's called Let Me Sing You a Song. You've asked me here to tell you about my neighbors and my friends, to talk about the who and what, the where and how and when. I won't give you anything you don't already know. But if you like, I'll sing that list of songs before I go. Let me sing you a song about the people that I love, the poets and philosophers, the workers and the wanderers, the ones who walk the picket lines, who dare to stand and fight, and the ones who hold their babies close and rock them through the night. You say it's un-American to do the things I do,
Well, I sing for justice, liberty, and civil rights, it's true. When I say it's un-American to ask me how I vote, how I pray, or what I believe, but here's a song I wrote. Let me sing you a song about the people that I love, the poets and philosophers, the workers and the wanderers, the ones who walk the picket lines, who dare to stand and fight, and the ones who hold their babies close and rock them through the night. Send me to prison, I guess that's the way it'll be. 'Cause I won't give you fodder for your paranoid machine. If the price of my silence is shackles, well then fellas, take me away, for I will live to sing again, rise with a brand new day. Let me sing you a song about the people that I love, the poets and philosophers, the workers and the wanderers, the ones who walk the picket lines, who dare to stand and fight, and the ones who hold their babies close and rock them through the night. Da 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 da, da 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 da. La da 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 la da 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 la da 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 la da 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 la da 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 la da 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 la da da da. Let me sing you a song about the people that I love, poets and philosophers, the workers and the wanderers, the ones who walk the picket lines, who dare to stand and fight, and the ones who hold their babies close and rock them through the night. Yes, the ones who hold their babies close and rock them through the night.
Joe, thank you very much for coming on.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Ray.
That's a great song.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now that let me ask about that now. That's actually the title track to your CD.
It is. There's a line in the song. The chorus says, "Let me sing you a song about the people that I love, the poets, philosophers, the workers, and the wanderers." And as I was stitching this most recent record together, I really had a hard time figuring out what to call it. It's always a tough thing when you put a record out. And I realized that this idea of poets, philosophers, workers, and wanderers really spoke to a lot of the characters in the songs that I sang, and that there's a narrative through line in the record that I don't know, that just seemed to address. And once it was all put together and I needed to pick a title, it was like, oh, bam, it kind of just rose to the surface and became self-evident.
It's hard to know where to start with you because you've had so much experience. So what I want to start with is you, sometime way in the back, you were trained at a conservatory. So what I want to ask you is, how did you get from there to folky singer-songwriter stuff?
Well, so what came before conservatory was folky singer-songwriter stuff. So that was actually the start. As I mentioned, I grew up listening to Pete Seeger records and folk music in general. There was a small folk club in my hometown, which is Rockford, Illinois. I live surprisingly only about 40 miles away from there now. It's it's amazing how life turns. In the interim, I've lived in, on the West Coast in Seattle, and I've lived in Cleveland and Cincinnati, and spent a whole lot of time as a touring artist in the last 20 years, all up and down the eastern seaboard. And somehow right now I'm living 40 miles away from where I grew up. It's just, it's kind of amazing how that happens. But there was a folk club in my hometown. It was called Charlotte's Web in Rockford, Illinois. And there were a lot of great musicians that came to Charlotte's Web, and my parents would take me to shows there. My older siblings would. I'm the youngest of 7 children in my family of origin, all of whom are very gifted musicians. I'm the only one that has pursued a life in performance, but one of my sisters, Jennifer, Jen Jencks Conley is her name, and she is a full-time hospice musician at this point. She's a music therapist and counselor, and does a lot of great work. And so I was really born into an ensemble, and there were all kinds of musical instruments in the house and all kinds of records, ranging from Vivaldi's Four Seasons to Black Sabbath, Paranoid, and everything in between. And I listened to all of it. I had a voracious mind for music. But it was really the folk singers from Pete Seeger to Cat Stevens, that really captured my heart. Sally Rogers, I don't know if you're familiar with her work, but she and Howie Burson, I got some of their records pretty early on in my folk music development, so there were a lot of people that had an input on my cultivation of musical style, and by the time I was thinking about college, I was really clear that I wanted to study music if I studied anything at all, but what I really wanted to do was hit the road and be a full-time performer and songwriter. And my mother, God love her, was absolutely insistent that I go to conservatory. She said, if you're going to be a musician, do it all the way, show up and do it all the way. And it was such a gift because I know so many people who really had to fight their parents. I graduated with a degree in vocal music performance, of which I was very proud, but, I hit the open job market with a shingle and singing and found out it wasn't worth a whole bunch in the grand scheme of things in terms of, translating into direct economic value. What it was worth was the experience that I had in theater and in stagecraft, in stage presence, in oratory, in learning how to learn music. How to learn a piece of music very quickly, because sometimes you'd be handed a thing one day and be on stage performing it 2 days later. And so I really learned a lot in school. I went to Millikan University, which is in Decatur, Illinois. It was founded as a conservatory and later opened up to be a wider college. But when I was there, it was still almost 70% of the student body was there for performing arts. And it was just a complete gift. But then I knew I really wanted to hit the road. So I left university with a master recording of my first record, The Phoenix. And I moved out to Seattle, and I sort of checked out 10 different cities around the United States to figure out which city really felt like it had the best community for me personally. And Seattle turned out to be the right place for me. And then I kind of went to grad school in the clubs and on the streets of Seattle and really learned how to translate a conservatory education into something that was more useful to me in a more pragmatic sense as a working musician, how to supplement the knowledge I had already been given with knowledge of music business and knowledge of booking and promotion, and how to translate skill into income, basically. And it was a gift. I'm so glad that I'd landed in Seattle of all the places I could have landed, because I was a very timid person at the time. And I think if I had gone to one of the big music cities, I think I would have just been eaten alive. And Seattle was a gentle enough place for me that I could sort of rise and grow at my own pace. And then I would say I was maybe 27 when I hit the road full time.
Okay. Yeah. Now, a lot of your songs are songs, I would say, I might call them social conscious songs. Where do you feel that you fit in with people like Pete Seeger and Phil Oakes and Tom Paxton and Charlie King and other people currently whose names are leaving me right now? But where do you fit in that whole, in a sense, genre?
Well, I would definitely think of myself as an artistic child or grandchild of many of those folks. I'll just own flat out that Charlie King and Tom Paxton have a capacity for wit and humor in their songwriting that I think I've never had. I've always been just a little more of a sober songwriter in some ways, but. It's not that I don't appreciate really humorous songs. I envy them. I wish I could write them, but I have always been drawn into a more linear narrative of things. But somebody asked Pete Seeger once, how come you don't write more love songs? And Pete laughed and said they're all love songs, And sometimes I've had moments on the left where I wanted to sing a love song, and I felt like people were reticent to receive it because what they wanted was rhetoric about rah rah up with the team, And the motto of the labor movement was bread and roses. It was the motto of the women's suffrage movement was bread and roses. Like give us bread, but give us roses. Give us the substance and the meat and the things that we need out of life. But what we're fighting for isn't just sustenance. What we're fighting for is beauty and wonder and creativity and a full access for every human being to this incredible well of richness that exists in cultural experience. And there's a way in which we get fixated on sort of, in progressive causes around the fight for this or that. And we forget that simply choosing to put art in the world in a communal context is a radical act unto itself. It doesn't have to be a radical song. The subject matter doesn't have to be, about this or about that. Simply gathering together in a room with people to participate in live music or to view art that people have created is a powerful kind of revolutionary act unto itself.
We're going to hear some more of your songs right now, and then we're going to come back and talk. And but first, I'm going to play a portion of a video of my next guest, the next show, and his name is Young Sam. Wait a minute, make sure I get his name. Young Sam James, I almost said Jones. Young Sam James. He plays guitar, banjo, accordion, and he plays them all very well, and which means that I don't like him. No. He kind of reminds me a little bit of a young Arla Guthrie in some ways. So he'll be here in a couple of weeks. And the name of this particular song is actually called Blue Workers. So we'll listen to some of that, and Joe will be back with 3 more of his songs.
I'm all that way. This standing job becomes choosing my fate. Well, I woke up early on Tuesday morning, but blues and bloody since the day I was born. He taxed me the nerve to knock on my door with Senator's pocket. Is this one for? The banks, they screw me, force me on my knees. Well, Thursday's here, man, I ain't got.
So this is a song I wrote a couple years ago after a dear friend of mine chose to end his own life. And I was wrestling with his choice and respectful of his choice, but he was a wonderful artist, and I was sad that I would no longer get to see the world through the lens of his perspective. And so I wrote within the song kind of a litany of images, of ideas and people in a place of transition, in places of struggle, in places of decision, because that's what he liked to write about. He liked to write about people standing at the crossroads of suffering and transcendence. And that's really what I wanted to capture in the song. It's called Going Home.
song for the sailor lost out to sea, a song for the mother who always will grieve, a song for the soldier who lays down his life, a song for the woman who once was his wife. A song for the traveler down on his luck, a circus man plying his trade for a buck, a song for the child who's lost in the night. Though she's never seen stars, she still clings to their light, going home, going home. A song for the mistress who dares to believe, wiping the tears from her eyes with her sleeve, a song for the poet who runs out of time before she can finish her famous last. A song for the miner who digs out the coal, dreams of a life somewhere far from this hole, a song for the rebel who gave up the fight, haunted by guilt as he still knows he's right, going home, going home. Lovers who never will meet, star-crossed and stumbling out on the street, a song for the preacher down on his knees, praying for answers he never quite sees, a song for the ones who run into the fire to put out the flames of this world on its pyre, a song for the driver who runs out of road, nobody there to help shoulder the load, going home, going home. Drinker who puts down the glass, a song for the jumper who takes a step back, a song for the wanderer home now at last, a song for redemption from sins of the past, a song for forgiveness that opens a door, a song for the good friends who gather once more, a song for the prisoner finally free, a song for the veil that is lifted, 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 going home, going song for the mystic who yearns for the trance, a song for the beggar, a song for the thief, a song for the hunger that has no relief, a song for the baby who sleeps until dawn, a song for the birds that will sing on and on, a song for the sunrise, a song for the day, a song for the veil that is lifted.
For the last several years, I've had the opportunity to be the songwriter in residence for a program in Spokane, Washington called Warriors Heart to Art. We bring visual artists and musicians together to work with veterans from all the branches of the service, women and men alike, combat veterans, service veterans from lots of different eras, to just tell their stories, mostly to each other. But as artists, we put our tools in their hands so that they have more opportunity to share in different ways their experiences. And then at the end of the retreat, we have an art show and a concert, and we invite the public in to bear witness to their experiences. And some of them are astonishing, some of them are horrific, some of them are inspiring. But when all of those stories come together in one place, a narrative emerges of people of deep faith who have sometimes become disillusioned during their course of service and are struggling now in civilian life to reground themselves. And it's an absolute honor to be a part of telling those stories, and it's a privilege to share their words and their ideas in song. So this is a song that I wrote with veterans in Spokane. But it really is their ideas and their thoughts, and they just gave me permission to turn it into a song. It's called One Piece at a Time.
Hoping for a new start, trying to find my way. Little bit of rebellion mixed with adventure far away. A family tradition to honor and to serve. The call of duty, now I'm down to my last nerve. Does anybody see me? Does anybody know what I've been through? Some folks gave their lives all at once. I've given up my life one piece at a time. I had a job, I did it well, tried to trust the chain of command. What in the world was I thinking? Now I walk among the damned, living on the edge of life and death. No, it takes its toll. The loss of innocence, no stability, no control. Does anybody see me? Does anybody know what I've been through? Some folks gave their lives all at once, but I've given up my life one piece at a time. Will I second guess my choices? Woulda, coulda, shoulda all the time. But on sleepless nights that doesn't help to find a reason or a rhyme. Picking up the pieces, honoring the dead. Not much here I understand, and there's a war inside my head. But I am not expendable, I'm still living with the pain. Though there are ways that I survived, I'm still dying every day. Does anybody see me? Does anybody know what I've been through? Some folks gave their lives all at once, but I've given up my life one piece at a time.
So that was the point where I took the song back and I gave it to the veterans and I said, how does it feel? Has it accurately reflected your experiences, your stories? And they all said, yeah, that it really had sort of captured what they were trying to say, the idea of feeling disappeared as they come back into civilian society. But a little bit later that afternoon, a young man who'd served 4 tours in Afghanistan came up to me. And I knew that I was in trouble because he'd spent the entire retreat either out on the porch smoking cigarettes or mostly looking at his own shoes. And he walked up to me and looked me square in the eye. And he said, "The song's not done yet." And I said, "Well, what does it need?" He said, "I don't know, you're the songwriter." And I said, "Well, obviously it feels like it's missing something. What's it missing?" And he looked at me and he just said, "Hope. It's missing hope. I need to know that the future has more power over my life than the past."
Believing that the future holds more power than the past, I reach with forgiveness for a new life I hope will last. So put a candle in the window, help me see I'm not alone. Though I have changed, I need to know I'm finally welcome home. Does anybody see me? Does anybody know what I've been through? Step by step and day by day I find I'm taking back my life one piece at a time. Does anybody see me? Does anybody know what I've been through? Step by step and day by day I find I'm taking back my life. Yes, I'm taking back my life. Taking back my life one piece at a time. One piece at a time.
So sometimes as a songwriter, we'll give ourselves assignments. I like to sometimes back myself into a corner so that I have to write my way back out. And I began pondering one day what would happen if Ray Charles and Dr. Seuss got together for a co-writing session. And this is what came out the other side of that idea. It's called Everybody Sings the Blues.
Well, I may not be the smartest man that ever walked on earth, and some of what's gone well for me might be an accident to birth. Oh, but deep inside the mystery surrounding me and you is something I have come to know and hold as deeply true. Well, you may be a woman from the right side of town, going out evenings in the finest of gowns. Ah, but one thing's for certain, you know it ain't news. Sooner or later, everybody sings the blues. Well, you may be erudite or a real cool cat, high-priced jet setter, going this way and that. Ah, but one thing's for certain, no matter the shoes, sooner or later, everybody sings the blues. Oh, lonely, we all get lonely sometimes. There's nothing anyone can do but hang on for just another day and hope that you get You may be ironic, you may be a clown, you may swear that you'll never wear your smile upside down. Ah, but one thing's for certain, whether you win or lose, sooner or later, everybody sings the blues. Yes, one thing's for certain, you know it ain't news. Sooner or later, everybody sings the blues. Sooner or later, everybody sings the blues.
So that was a slide of some of the people that will be guests over really the next couple months, I guess. I wanted to mention a book that I just finished. This is called Confessions of a Serial Songwriter by Shelley Pekin, who's she's written pop songwriter. And I really like this book. It's not really a book per se on the craft of songwriting. It's really her memoir, I guess you'd say, of being a songwriter, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's a really good book, and I think songwriters should read this book, and that's why I'm kind of wanting to. She's not giving me any money to do this, so I'm just doing it on my own. Because I think it's such a really good book.
This is not an infomercial.
This is not an infomercial. Confessions of a Serial Songwriter.
Nice.
I wanted to ask you about how you come up with ideas for your songs. And when you sit down and write a song, what's the most important thing for you?
I would say the music is by far the most important. I know a lot of songwriters that start with poetry first and then invent music to support the poetry. I in no way want to suggest that's not a valid way for people to write songs. There's plenty of great songs that come that way. But for me personally, it always starts with melody. Always. Melody is the most powerful mnemonic device there is. If you want to create a song that's singable, if you want to create a song that other people will want to sing, a song that will stay in people's heads, that they'll kind of noodle on in the shower and, ponder to themselves as they're stuck in traffic. The melody is everything. And I think that's one of the gifts that conservatory training gave me, alongside being steeped in traditional Irish music and Celtic music in my family of origin, is that these are both traditions that very much are melodically driven traditionally. And from that, usually there's a lyric paired with a particular melodic motif or riff, a word phrase. There's a song on this CD called Given Myself to Love. And that just downloaded, oh, I've given myself to love. And I heard the chord changes and everything. And then I was like, okay, how did I get there? And then I have to think about the arc of melody and the narrative that gets me to that line. There's different ways that different songs come into existence, but almost always it's only a little snippet of lyric, and then the melody and the chord changes come totally into fruition, and then I kind of go back in and figure out what the narrative is and how to express that narrative in a way that is true now to the music that's been created.
Well, that particular song, Given Myself to Love, when I was listening to that, to me it just spoke musical theater.
Thank you. I felt as I was writing it that I was sort of channeling old Rodgers and Hammerstein, Rodgers and Hart kind of melodies.
Yep.
And like I mentioned, I did spend a lot of time doing music theater in high school and when I was in conservatory. And it's just I've gone through a lot of transitions in my life in the last few years, and there's a very famous song that Kate Wolf wrote called "Give Yourself to Love," and that song was sung at my wedding. As I was just on the leading edge of a divorce, this song emerged kind of in response as a bookend for me artistically to that Kate Wolf song at the beginning of this lengthy relationship. And then at the end, I wrote the song Giving Myself to Love.
I want to talk about your new CD because you got a lot of good press on it, I guess you'd say. So I'm going to read a quote by Mary Sue Toohey, who has a couple shows on Sirius XM Radio, The Village and the Bridge. And she says of your CD, if one can master a craft after investing 10,000 hours, Joe Jencks' hours are showing. I'm literally stunned by this new album. Poets, philosophers, workers, and wanderers tells our stories, his stories, and the untold stories as an American folk master can, with heart and unfettered perfection. In this recording, Joe Jencks opens all the doors and windows of his traditional Celtic and blues voice. It is his best recording yet. Add this one to the folk canon. Tell a little bit about anything you want about the album, but also the fact that you've gotten some nice response to it.
Well, this is a record that I was working on over parts of 3 different years, and it's songwriting that spans almost 8 years of my life. As you mentioned earlier, I've been a part of a trio with my bandmates Greg Greenway and Pat Richter called Brother Son, and so I was working on this record concurrently with other projects and a whole lot of touring with the trio and solo touring, and as I mentioned, a lot of transitions in my personal life. So this was a very protracted process working on this record. But it allowed me to be very intentional about everything that's on the record. Sometimes you hit the studio and you're in a hurry because you have a deadline. You want to get it done before this event or that event, or you're sort of stuck in a train that's moving that you can't figure out how to get off of. And this record, it was so intentional. There are orchestral arrangements, strings and horns on here, and I got to take my time and arrange for those instruments. There are a lot of great guest musicians, Reggie Harris, Issa Barnwell from Sweet Honey and the Rock, Tret Fury, Edie Carey, John Carroll, wonderful keyboard player. The group Harpeth Rising is on here. They're helping me with the string arrangements. Just a lot of really gifted musicians heard the songs and were moved by them and were willing to come, hang out with me and help me make this record. And Charlie Pilzer down at Air Show in Washington, D.C., in Tacoma Park, is a wonderful engineer and co-produced this with me. But like I mentioned earlier, there's kind of a narrative thread that runs through this that is really about people that are at the crossroads of sort of suffering and transcendence. And I didn't realize how much that vein aligned itself through the whole recording until it was done. And then I sat down and listened to it and was really surprised. So I was really grateful that so many people have enjoyed hearing this record. There's been some great press. It's been at the top of the folk charts and a couple of the Americana charts. But mostly after several years of working on it, I'm really satisfied that the record is out in the world and that the songs can live in people's hearts now in a new way, because we create something in the laboratory environment of the studio, and your truest hope is that when it goes out into the world, when it flies into the world, that it really lands in people's hearts. And so the press and the radio play and all of that is not about itself. It's just it's sort of like the meter on the needle on a meter. It's just a gauge of whether or not the art is touching people where they need to be touched. Exactly. And so I just have a tremendous sense of gratitude to all of the people that helped make this record with me, and in particular to the DJs out there that are willing to listen to independent music and put it on the air. It's huge, the folk DJ community, as well as a lot of Americana and AAA radio stations, and all the folks that are willing to take a chance on somebody who's not part of a major label.
I have one more question for you. As somebody who's been touring for 18 years, and I get songwriters, young songwriters, especially on this show, ask them what they want to do, and they want to say, I want to be a singer-songwriter. What suggestions, or not the word I'm looking for, would you want to say to them in terms of maybe some of the ups as well as some of the downs, pros and the cons, good, bad, and ugly of this life?
The first thing I would say is that if somebody really wants to pursue this, that they absolutely should. At some point, there's a certain amount of discernment that should come in as to whether or not you really have the skill sets that are required to pull it off, if not just the musical skill set, but the temperament, the disposition, the discipline that's required. Whether or not you're willing to work harder for yourself than you've ever worked in your life for anybody else. But if the answer to those questions is yes, if you have a vision that you want to put out there as an artist of any kind, not just singer-songwriters, I think people should absolutely go for it. And it doesn't matter whether, they're 18 years old when they're starting out or in their 60s or 70s. I have a friend, Julius Margolin, who has now passed, but Julius started his touring singer-songwriter career when he was 82 years old. He was in the Merchant Marines. He was on the same ship as Woody Guthrie. And after he retired long since, he just decided, I think I want to go do this work. So it is absolutely possible to do it, but it does take discipline. It does take work. And I will say that you can absolutely waste your time waiting for other people to tell you you are good enough, or you can just decide you're going to do it. You can spend your time waiting to get booked into this festival or this club or this event, or you can go out in the world as an artist and an entrepreneur and create opportunity and keep working in any way that you can as a musician to get diverse experiences. And at some point, suddenly you will have built critical mass, and people will say, oh, look at this guy, he's an overnight success, or look at her, she just overnight, she's everywhere. And you look at any of those people and you see 10 or even 20 years, 30 years in some cases, of absolutely devoted, determined, dedicated effort that went into that overnight success. And so I would simply offer encouragement to say it's absolutely possible. It requires patience, and it requires consistent effort. You can't control the outcome, but you can control the effort. And if the effort is consistent, you can guarantee that there will be somewhere down the line a positive outcome.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Joe Jencks, thank you.
Great, thanks for having me. What a pleasure.
So, see you in about 2 weeks. The next guest is young Sam Janes, and see you then.